famous Dragonborn characters. Can you think of a famous Dragonborn
Oh
character?
boy, I don't even know if
Mm,
I want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. It
yeah, it
seems like
doesn't.
people are saying it, but I'm not saying that.
Don't listen to them.
This feels like you can have your cake and eat it too. Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of The Game. Today we're going to be talking about Dragonborn. What do you feel about Dragonborn?
What do I feel about Dragonborn? That's a fascinating question to me because I'm very much of two minds. The Dragonborn to me are like copies of the Draconians in Kryn in Dragonlance, which is the first time I saw anything vaguely resembling Dragonborn. And they're also really similar to lizard men. So there's like lizard men, Dragonborn, and Draconians.
Yeah.
The Draconians still are the coolest though, because there's different types of them, and some of them can fly. And whenever you kill a Draconian, depending on what type of Draconian they die in a different way. Like, and usually that includes hurting you. Like, for example, you stick a sword in a Draconian and you kill them, and it's a certain type of Draconian. They turn into stone and then they explode. And then you've got the Dragonborn in video games like the Neverwinter, for example, the MMO,
Yeah.
where they're just these huge hulking things, and it's like the bigger their shoulders are, the more powerful they are, basically.
Really?
Sort of seem to be based on some kind of 80s women's suit aesthetic,
Yeah.
something like that, just big shoulder pads.
The old shoulder pads.
I can imagine them being cool, but I haven't yet run them in any of my campaigns personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I can imagine they could be cool. But I've also seen lots of terrible examples of how they could not be cool.
This is going to be a really interesting topic because, my experience with Dragonborn is pretty much going to be Critical Role or any
Right.
other shows that I've seen that have used Dragonborn. In the game that I play in, my DM runs very long form campaigns, as we've talked about. I'm now in this one, which I think is going on for 7 years. The one before that, I think, was like a 5-year campaign. The one before that was like another 5-year campaign. So I've had very little chance to play a Dragonborn.
Right.
And then in the games that I've run, no one has yet picked a Dragonborn. So personally, I don't have a lot of I take that back. I have Dragonborn NPCs, which we will talk about, but I haven't really gotten the into the minutia of Dragonborn. Right. So I am excited to talk about this. I'm excited to learn a little bit more and see your perspectives, because I feel like you probably have more experience here. And you've read all the Dragonlance novels.
Well, I read a lot of them because I don't think anyone's read all of them. I don't think it's possible for any one person to read all of them. There's just millions of them. And I'm exaggerating, but there's a lot of them. The other thing I can say about Dragonborn is one of my personal influences was Matt Colville. If you've seen The Chain of Acheron.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Right, because he does Dragonborn, and he does this kind of Dragonborn kind of voice. Like I'll have to refresh on it, but
you're right. I do remember specifically some videos where he picks up this very specific voice pattern for Dragonborn, and it's really cool.
And the weird thing is, in his world, the Dragonborn are illegal. It's not that they don't exist; they're illegal.
Yeah.
So if you play one, you're going to be on the run. You're going to be wanted. You're going to be they're going to chase you down.
You're making that choice.
You're making that choice. So
yeah.
And I admire that about Matt Colville, in that he's not scared to say that you can make bad choices from the outset as a player. These are the consequences of choosing this thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, Dragonborn.
So let's talk about what is a Dragonborn. If you don't know what a Dragonborn is, what is that? What does it look like?
It's like a humanoid, scaly individual with claws and clawy feet and possibly kind of backward knees, possibly, depending on how you envisage it, possibly with a tail and with a draconic head. So like a snout with teeth and dragon eyes and noses and all the bits that dragons have, but not really with wings, I don't think.
When I was doing my research, there was some mention of the possibility of wings, and I think that might have been maybe in older editions. Yes, humanoid dragon, scales, claws. They're known for having like dragon breath, right? Breath weapons.
Yes, breath weapons, draconic heritage. They tie into sorcerers quite strongly because of, draconian dragon lineage, draconic lineage sorcerers.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to have a Dragonborn sorcerer. Famous Dragonborn characters. Can you think of a famous Dragonborn character?
Oh boy, I don't even know if I want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
You think of an elf, or you think of a drow, you think of Drizzt. You think of an elf, you think of Legolas. You think of a Dragonborn, and you're like,
well, there's one, but
there's one?
Well, there's one. If you watched the very early seasons of Critical Role.
Oh yeah, right. What's his face? And he was a sorcerer as well.
Orion Okaba, yeah, he was a sorcerer Dragonborn that did not
drug fiend.
Go well. And so that's the only famous Dragonborn character that I know.
But they came out in 3.5.
Yeah,
in 2006. Apparently.
That's what I found interesting. My DM has this book. It is called The Races of the Dragon. Really, really cool. I do remember one of my friends being the first to play this kind of race and thinking it was, the way she played it was way different. Like, I don't remember her looking like a dragon, Dragonborn, the way that we talk about them now. Like where you actually look like a humanoid dragon. So
because the other thing is there are kobolds.
Yeah.
And kobolds also have this whole thing where they believe they come from draconic ancestry. So it's like, D&D, can you make up your fucking mind?
Yeah.
Can we have one species, please?
This is where, it becomes a little difficult. I think, they're giving you guidelines here, right? Let's cover this more in detail real quick. So the guidelines are Dragonborns tend to be pretty strong. You get a +2 to your strength and +1 to charisma because dragons are beautiful or
paladins.
Charismatic. Yeah.
And if they're metallic, they sort of tend to be good and have honor as well. So that plays into the whole paladin thing.
Right. So and that's something we should maybe someday, once we're done covering all the races in the player's handbook, is talk about dragons, because there's so much lore for dragons. But if you know about the chromatic and the metallic dragons and how that all ties in, then when you choose that for your character, that kind of also ties in as well. Like those abilities. Apparently young Dragonborn grow quickly. So if you're thinking about your backstory, you got to think about, you could be full grown, but like really you're only 8 years old.
Do they come from eggs or are they live born?
It does say hatching. They walk hours after hatching.
There you go.
I guess according to the lore, you are hatched by an egg.
To go back to what I was looking up for you before, the Draconians in Krynn, who to me are like the progenitors of the Dragonborn, they come in a number of different sort of subspecies. You've got the Baz Draconians, who come from brass dragon eggs, and they turn to stone when they die and they explode. The Bozaks are born from bronze dragon eggs, and they cast spells and they explode when they die. The Capaks are from copper dragon eggs, and they can spit venom and they dissolve into a pool of venom or acid when they die. That will also hurt you.
Wow.
The Sivaks are created from silver dragon eggs and can shapeshift and assume the form of their slain foes. It doesn't tell me how they die. Aurochs or Aurochs emerge from gold dragon eggs, and they're the most powerful with the ability to cast spells, turn invisible, and they explode in a burst of deadly energy when they die. Yes, in Dragonlance, the evil queen of the dragons, who you know as Tiamat, is called Tarkesis. Basically the same character. There's arguments about whether they're the same character. It's the same goddess. It's the 5-headed goddess of dragons, of the chromatic dragon. So it's clearly the same goddess.
Yeah.
Right. And she uses the the Draconians as foot soldiers in Dragonlance. And so she has armies of them and these different ranks of them and so on. So there's lots and lots of Draconians in Dragonlance. But there's no Dragonborn at all.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So they're called Draconians. Yeah.
Yeah. And and that's interesting. The term Draconian itself is has its own connotations.
Right. Aside from all the, physical traits that we've talked about, and we've kind of talked about, your draconic ancestry and how, that can change the breath weapon that you have and the damage type. I find that really interesting that some of these,
resistance as well.
And your resistance. Yeah. Is usually, so let's say if you have a black dragon draconic ancestry, then your breath weapon is acid and you shoot it in a 30-foot line, but you're also resistant to acid.
Right.
What I find interesting is some of these, depending on which ancestry you choose, your breath weapon goes out in a line or in a 15-foot cone, right? So there's a 30-foot line, 15.
Jeez, I thought you
Right.
said 50 feet.
So 30-foot line
I'm
or
playing a dragon.
15-foot cone, which I find very interesting. So as we get to the min-max section, that's something you're going to want to think about is like, how
Right.
do you want to do damage? Do you want
You're gonna
like
build
direct
it.
fire or do you want like spray?
Yeah,
Kind of.
right. And what type of damage, depending on which scenario you're in, because
Yeah.
let's say you've got trolls, you might want fire damage.
Yeah. Let's see here. So the different damage types are acid, lightning, fire, poison, and cold. Those are the
Right.
different types of like breath weapons or damage types.
How much damage do they do? Because I've heard people criticizing the Dragonborn's breath weapon.
I don't have those stats on me, so I don't know off the top of my head, but
I'll find out while you
I
keep
do
talking.
recall, I don't remember if it was in Critical Role or something where the breath weapon really, it's not gonna be your heavy hitter. It's just kind of a fluff,
Yeah.
I think you get
I got a feeling it's like a D4 or a D6. Oh, I take it back. According to ChatGPT, at levels 1 to 5, the breath weapon damage deals 2d6 damage. Levels 6 to 10, it goes up to 3d6. 11 to 15, it's 4d6. And then at 16 to 20, it deals 5d6 damage.
Not bad.
It's actually pretty reasonable. I mean, that's
Yeah.
as much as you're going to get out of like a 2d6 that's like a battle axe, like a
And
great
essentially
axe.
it's a cantrip in a sense, right? Like
Right.
you're not using resources and
No, I assume it's an action to use it, or is it a bonus action? That's a curious question, and of course, it depends on which edition you're playing and all of that stuff too. So,
right.
all the economy of action, you take that into account while you're min-maxing your Dragonborn.
I was gonna pull up. I made a Dragonborn character on
you did?
D&D Beyond. My breath weapon, it's an action.
Right.
It kind of sucks that it's an action, but I
It
guess
does, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, 2d6 damage though at level 1 to 3, 1
Yeah.
to 5 actually, which is actually less good. 1 to 3 would be better because then you'd go up sooner.
Yeah.
But,
I guess it's better. I guess if they made it a bonus action, they would have to power it down, and then it would feel like, what's the point? So
Right.
yeah.
I mean, and it's an AOE as well. So 2d6 damage and an AOE for
This
an
is
action.
true.
You could hit like 3 or 4 characters with that.
This is true.
If you
Good
really
point.
lined it up.
Very good point.
I mean, I had a game last night. Someone cast Cone of Cold on a group of wizards and demons across a bridge, and they fucked them up, man. I was like, oh my god! They had a surprise round, and the party consisted of 3 players, and they just about wiped out my group. And I'm like, oh my god! I really had to play hard after that just to turn the tables on them. For a while, but breath weapons nasty. Cones, terrible.
So I guess it must deal with tactics then. Maybe the folks I've seen use it aren't necessarily using it to the best of their ability. Could be.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you take the MMOs like Neverwinter, and you see people playing Dragonborns in Neverwinter, they always look to be the most ridiculous characters in the game. Like, they don't give a fuck about what they look like, but they are the most min-maxed kick-ass tanks, and usually paladin tanks. They beat the shit out of everyone, and of course you have to pay extra to play a Dragonborn in Neverwinter.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think there's like an upgraded version of the Dragonborn. So yeah, it's definitely a sort of pay to win kind of situation where you're buying a little bit more to get that extra little squeak out of your stats.
Extra little bit.
Yeah. And so Dragonborn are sort of the go-to race for tanks.
Yeah.
Neverwinter.
I'm really glad that you brought up the books though, and also Neverwinter as like examples of, if you don't know what a Dragonborn is, this is something that you can kind of grasp onto, because when I tried to look in like today's media, TVs, movies, anything like that, there's nothing really.
Right. No.
Nothing really. The closest that I came to it, this is what I found. So if you think of Game of Thrones, Daenerys Targaryen has a very strong tie to like her dragons, but she is not what we would call a Dragonborn, right?
Not at all.
Okay. Aragon, the book series, again, a human, looks like a human, has very strong ties with dragon. That's more like How to Train Your Dragon. I made friends with a dragon. Like, that's not Dragonborn.
No.
Yeah, everything else that I found was the closest thing is, like you said, lizard folk. If there was any kind of movie that portrayed lizard people, that might be the closest you get to what a Dragonborn is.
I guess the creature of the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
Or
if you have gotten into the kind of the new Godzilla movies and the new show on Apple TV, Godzilla himself kind of feels like he's a big ass dragonborn because he's got a character. Actually, he's kind of beefy. He walks around like if he could talk, that's a giant dragonborn.
And he could swing a sword at you. You'd be so fucked.
You would be. Oh my gosh.
Like, the Empire State Building. Woof.
Oh my gosh. We already covered some of the other stuff about the lore, right? Apparently they are hatched from dragon eggs, or actually the origin of the dragonborn themselves says,
so this is the shit I want to know.
Yeah. So apparently they were shaped by draconic gods or dragons themselves, and the race came from a dragon egg.
Just remembered.
What?
You want a reference for Dragonborn?
Sure, yeah.
Star Trek, the Gorn.
Nice try, Gorns!
Oh, there you go. That is perfect.
It is.
Oh my gosh. So apparently the actual origin of Dragonborn themselves is that they were born from an egg and then became a race. I mean, I guess it's kind of like a big bang of Dragonborn, I guess.
Right.
You already touched on that they came in at 3.5. There were different editions at 4th, and now we're at 5th edition. The interesting thing is that they used to have tails, and now they don't.
Right.
I'm curious. They don't really discuss, I think, the reason why.
It reminds me of tieflings in some ways too. It's like, I don't know. I just feel like they should just leave it alone. They should be like, if you want to have a tail, no, actually, then you know what? They shouldn't, because if you have a tail, people want it to be prehensile. And then they want to use their tail as a bonus action to pick up shit and throw things and open doors and traps and trip people.
Maybe that's why. Maybe it was mechanics.
It's mechanics.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Because in Critical Role, when the Dragonborn character was on there, I think they do touch on some lore where there's like Dragonborn with tails versus Dragonborn without tails, and there's kind of like a class system amongst the Dragonborn race if you have a tail or not, if I remember correctly. Okay. So I was curious when I was doing my research, like as far as mechanics go, they never mention why they removed the tail in 50. But that makes sense to me, that it's like, oh, well, for the DM's sake, we're just not going to give them tails.
Yeah, probably years of playtesting, and they went, yeah, we're going to nerf them now. They need to be nerfed. They're kicking ass too much, and everyone's playing Dragonborn for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing I want to know about Dragonborn is like, what kind of stories can you run? Can you be, as a player, what do you expect as a Dragonborn, and as a DM, what should you be providing? What's the story of the Dragonborn, and how do they fit into your story or your campaign?
In your world,
your setting is going to be really important. So if it's homebrew or if it's Dragonlance or whatever, it's going to have different scenarios. So yeah. I
mean, you'd think, you definitely need to kind of bake that in and think about that, because if I were to play a Dragonborn character, coming across a dragon in a campaign seems pretty likely when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And what is my connection to a dragon? Am I semi-related to it? Do I think of them as gods? And
it has also all the weird connotations that a lot of the other species and races in D&D have, like, Tabashi and so on. You turn up in a city and everyone's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
What the fuck is that? If you're a minority species in your game, I want to buy some full plate armor. I'm sorry, it's all made for humans and elves and dwarves. We haven't got any with shoulder plates this big, pauldrons,
Yeah.
So everything's got to be custom made.
I don't think people play like that anymore, though, to be honest. Well, I don't want to say that people don't at all.
Excuse me. I'm right here.
Right. I just meant that I feel like the majority sentiment that I see across on platforms is that they don't worry about those things.
No,
you're a Dragonborn, you can get armor, and like it's a melting pot wherever they're at.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
That's probably true. Have some old-fashioned ideas, I suppose.
Clan life. You did mention clan life, which I thought that's a really interesting aspect and something that I think a player and DM can latch onto for world building, for backstory.
Right. And like, you're metallic or chromatic Dragonborn, and is that going to affect your alignment? And are you going to lean into that or against it?
And what do you think if you come across a Dragonborn that, if you're chromatic and you come across a metallic, or vice versa, does that change your? Yeah.
Are you going to spit acid at them in a 15-foot cone, doing 2d6 damage,
or a 30-foot line? this was another thing that I found really interesting. I like the clan life aspect. And when I looked at D&D Beyond and the player's handbook, they were talking about Dragonborn names, which I don't know that a lot of people look into this, but I like the lore when they give you suggestions on how to name your character.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're seeing names and it's like, and I don't know how to pronounce that. But what they say here, the Dragonborn, they have personal names given at birth. And then they have their clan name, which they put in front of that as a mark of honor. So in my brain, I'm translating that as like last name first kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
But then you get a childhood name or a nickname that's often used among your clutch mates as a descriptive term or term of endearment. These names might be climber, earbender, leaper, pious. It's something that's a single word and it's very descriptive and probably emotes what your personality is like or what you're about. That's a big deal. I mean, picking a name you can lean into that for character development and backstory and clans and all of that stuff. That's so much there in just that one little thing, your name.
Right.
Yeah. Super cool.
And that goes for all characters too. But as you're pointing out, you know, with Dragonborn in particular, you've got this 3-barrel name system.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I use that system with elves.
Do you?
They do that in Mandarin, actually, in Chinese. You know, your last name comes first. So
that makes sense. It's funny, as a writer, I have seen so many people agonize over like, what do I name my main character? I need help naming my main character. And one of my writing heroes, Brandon Sanderson, has always said, and I have also agreed, like people put too much stress on names. It's a name. Name your character Bob. As long as Bob is interesting and people want to read about Bob, the name doesn't matter. And so that's what I've always gone by. But thinking about this more and looking at this, I went, this is so interesting because just by developing, not necessarily the name, but the reason behind the name is super interesting to me. And that, I don't know. Yeah. I feel like my mind kind of got blown and I went, oh, I should think about this more when I tell people that names don't matter.
It is an interesting thing because like I did a degree in writing, and we talked about naming characters and Hollywood conventions in regards to that, and how with the Hollywood formula, typically you're looking to name your character in a way that sort of subtly suggests something about who the character is. It's sort of if if it's Jack Nicholson, it's probably some sort of more rough kind of, I don't know, something about the name that has some texture to it that adds something to the character, that gives you a feeling about the character. Or it could be totally explicit and literally tell you who the character is. I don't know, names like Jack Reacher. What does that mean? You know, it doesn't exactly tell you anything, but you get a sense from it.
Right. You get that there's a cadence to the name that you're like, oh, that guy's badass. Right. So really cool.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I was looking into, and I think you also touched on, was their deities or religion. I did not find that Dragonborn as a race had specific deities. However, there are Draconic-Type deities that I think work really well. So if you choose like to be a cleric or a paladin, then
which your character will be easily able to lean into because of your stat base.
Yeah, then you could go with Bahamut. I think Bahamut and Tiamat are probably going to be the two that people recognize the most.
They're the standouts. Yeah.
Right. Bahamut being the platinum dragon and on the good alignment. And then Tiamat being the chromatic dragon and also like all the dragon heads or something. Seven heads?
Five. Red, green, blue, black, and white. Yeah,
there you go. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, Tiamat being on the evil alignment. So again, based on your decisions, you can choose one of those. Cord is mentioned as the god of strength. I don't think he's a dragon. I think he just aligns really well because Dragonborn tend to be, you can pick a fighter or, as a paladin or something. And Cord is the god of strength and athletics and courage. And
I know I keep bringing up Dragonlance, but it's like Dragon Lance. And of course, you've got Bahamut and Tiamat in Forgotten Realms, but they are pretty much identical to Tarkesis and Paladin in Dragonlance. So those are two other names for those two gods.
That's true. Yeah. Depending on like what world you're in, or if you want a different name or vibe for your gods. You can go the other route. Moradin, which I think is a dwarven god, but craftsmanship and forging, and it also kind of emotes a little bit of like strength, I think, with that.
Yeah.
And this is one I hadn't heard of. Lendis, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but is the god of justice, law, and death. So for paladins who maybe want to uphold like principles of justice and also exact punishment, maybe, I don't know, something to that effect.
Right. Sort of retribution and stuff like that. Right. Vengeance, paladins sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a paladin or a cleric, it's great to have a patron like that. Patron being a warlock phrase in D&D, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm about.
I know what you're talking about.
You feel me?
I feel ya.
They know what I'm talking about too.
They do. The last few races we've covered, we've talked about like their sub races. Dragonborn don't really have sub races so much as like there's types.
Colors.
There's like
that's
chromatic,
basically
gem dragonborn, metallic dragonborn.
I don't know anything about gem dragons? Nothing at all.
Well, I have some basic information here. So let's go down with it. Okay, so chromatic dragonborn, those are associated with the evil alignment. That's the red, blue, black, green, all that.
Chroma, meaning color.
Chroma, yeah. Their breath weapon typically corresponds with that damage type. We already talked about that. Gem dragonborn, they're linked to gem dragons. That makes sense. So you want to think of amethyst, emerald, ruby. Those are kind of the colors, if you will. Gem Dragonborn possess psychic abilities or psionic powers that are tied to the gem dragon heritage. Their scales and characteristics may reflect the colors and properties of specific gemstones. And so going along with that theme. Metallic Dragonborn, those are the gold, silver, bronze, all that.
Platinum.
Yeah. So those are all tied to benevolent metallic dragons. Again, their breath weapon is associated with the metallic dragon lineage. Drakenblood Dragonborn. Can I say that correctly? Drakenblood Dragonborn.
What?
Yeah. So apparently they have a mix of chromatic and metallic dragon ancestry. This feels like you can have your cake and eat it too.
That's a little salty.
This is Dragon Ball Z Fusion Ha with metallic and chromatic dragons.
Okay.
So they may possess a breath weapon that combines aspects of the chromatic and metallic dragons.
Basically, make your own Dragonborn is what you're saying.
Kind of feels like it, I guess. Like I said, have your cake and eat it too.
Customize your Dragonborn.
Ravenite Dragonborn are tied to Tiamat, and that's the chromatic scale. So they are typically depicted as followers or servants of Tiamat, embodying her values, greed, power, and tyranny. It doesn't really talk a lot about their the difference mechanically.
Right.
So
there probably isn't too much difference.
Yeah.
It seems like a factional thing.
It seems more like a factional thing.
I think you can assume that if they're working directly for Tiamat, then they probably are based in, is it Avernus where Tiamat is based? One of the planes of hell? I think it's the upper layer. I'm not an expert on this stuff.
Yeah.
But I believe Tiamat is like banished to hell and she has to sit there and look after her one plane of existence. And she sends her avatars to other places and blah. Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Assuming that she has a whole horde of Dragonborn, then that's probably what you're talking about.
Maybe. These would be her servants. Yeah.
They could be sort of almost like fiends.
As far as type or subrace, those are kind of your options. I feel like you already have a lot of options just by being able to pick a color, let alone add to that some extra layers.
So you could feasibly be like a metallic Dragonborn sorcerer of draconic ancestry from a chromatic line.
Yeah.
That's twisted.
Thing is an abomination.
I would like to think I almost, gosh, if anybody out there watches this and they have chosen that, I would love to hear the why. Just because it's not making sense here. I think
there's a very simple answer is mechanics. They want to kick shit and take fucking numbers, you know?
I mean,
take names and
on that note,
I'm gonna kill some guys. I'm gonna smoke some cigarettes, and I'm all out of cigarettes.
So I'm gonna kick your ass.
Right.
So on this note, let's talk about min-max builds. I feel
Right.
like it's not covered here in my min-max build research, but now that we've talked this through, I feel like your Drake and Blood Dragonborn is probably the way to go so that you get the best of everything. You get to choose.
Right, right.
Correct me
I
if
mean,
I'm wrong.
yeah, I mean, maybe there is. I mean, in a lot of cases where they have a mechanic whereupon you can choose things, and usually when there's something that's more flexible, it's usually just a little bit less powerful.
Yeah,
just a little bit less. You know, like humans, for example, they can do anything, but they don't get big stat bonuses to anything.
yeah.
You know, so there's the trade-off.
Yeah.
So I wonder what the trade-off is there, if there is one, or are they just OP? Because in Neverwinter they are OP as fuck. That's what I can say. By the way, Neverwinter is a free game. Well, when I say free, it's pay to win, but it's free to play.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. So min-max builds for class selection. We've talked about Paladin a lot already. It makes a lot of sense because you get the strength bonus. Fighter.
Multi-class as a Paladin sorcerer, then you get all the Dragonborn shit.
Why not? Yeah, be a Drake and Blood Paladin sorcerer and you've just got everything. Fighter Barbarian goes really well. If you can be Paladin, why not be Warlock? You know, you can do it's kind of, I don't know, to me, both the opposite sides of the same coin.
Warlocks use charisma, don't they?
Warlocks use charisma.
Right.
Yeah, and you get a charisma bonus as your draconic ancestry.
You could have a patron. That would make a lot of sense. You could work that into it quite easily. Dragon patron. Yeah.
So the only other one that got thrown in here, and I'm not sure if this is like if you want to build a dexterous dragonborn. I don't know. Dexterity hasn't come into this at all, but Ranger came up as kind of a
is there a dex
build?
Is there a dex dragonborn build?
Not that I'm aware of. That's why I was really curious. I was like, I wonder if this is because you can build a ranger that is not a ranged combat.
Yeah, right.
You can do a melee.
Right. Yeah.
So that could be why you can use the strength bonus for the melee combat and still be a ranger. I'm not sure why you would want to do that. Because if you're going to go melee, then why not
be a fighter or something? I mean, maybe it's for role-playing reasons, for doing things like tracking and other.
Well, rangers do get spells though. So you can use and if you can use your charisma bonus for any of those spells, maybe that's why. Now that I'm talking this out, I'm like, okay, so you can kind of have a little melee, you can kind of have a little magic.
Yeah, rangers are pretty good. I mean, I like rangers, but that being said, I've heard a lot of criticisms of rangers over the years, but I do understand they have supposedly fixed them. And particularly, it was the Beastmaster rangers, I think, that people have problems with. And I think the main reason was because you'd have a beast that you could control, and you could choose to spend your action to get the beast to attack something.
But
then you
it's
don't
like,
have
then what do you do? Yeah.
So what's the fucking point of having a beast if you're going to have to spend your action doing that? I mean, that totally defeats the purpose of it.
To me, that sounds like, again, if we're going to go like ranger and do ranged combat, it's like a form of ranged combat. You're like standing in the background going, attack that guy. I'm going to stand over here and watch you.
Right. I mean, to me, rangers are always kind of, for me personally, the hallmarks of a ranger is that they have a long bow and they have a sword, if not two swords, right? And you see a lot of players with rangers that have that are dual wielding short swords usually, but sometimes they have feats to let them use bigger swords and stuff, which is cool. I personally really like that. Then that sort of sense that they are really good at archery and pretty good at hand-to-hand fighting.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the best at melee, but pretty good at it nonetheless.
Yeah.
And that ability to switch to me is the hallmark of a ranger. But you do see rangers that are balanced either one way or the other as well. So, however you want to play it. And I don't know how a Dragonborn plays into that, but I assume they'd be better at the melee than the dex.
I would think so. Yeah, because they get more of the strength bonus. So
of course we've got Tasha's Cauldron's rules, so you could make your Dragonborn however the fuck you like.
Have it your way.
Go ahead, I dare you.
The ability score increases. Okay, so we already talked about, melee, I think, is the way to go for Dragonborn. Boost their constitution if you can, because you're going to be in melee. Anything to do with charisma spell casting, classes, anything to boost your charisma for those things. See, here it is again, dexterity. Beneficial for ranged combat, I guess, if you're going to be a ranged combat, but...
Does it give you dex, does it, Dragonborn?
No, it doesn't. That's the thing.
So So why are you bringing up Dex?
Because it's coming up in my research. Oh, this is interesting. When I'm looking at the way people want to min-max build Dragonborns, Dex is coming up, but it's coming up as like a last option. So
right. I see what
I
you
guess
mean.
I wouldn't lean into Dex is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it seems like people are saying it, but I'm not saying that.
Don't listen to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you're going to play a character that is if you're going to choose a species or a race, surely you are choosing that for some, beyond just, I don't know. I'm actually talking shit because I like to play characters that don't at all min-max and
right.
at least bit competent at fighting. So
yeah, same.
Right.
Trust me, having these min-max conversations is difficult because I'm like, I can see why people would do this. I don't know that I would do this.
Right. I mean, Dragonborn rogue.
Yeah. I mean,
you could do it, of course.
You could do it.
Yeah.
All right.
I like the idea of a Dragonborn that is kind of lean and dexterous. I mean, dragons, like you see kind of skinny, slinky lizards.
Yeah.
Right. And they're dexterous as hell. They jump up on branches and climb around stuff and sneak through holes and
yeah.
Lizard skinks and stuff are super dexterous.
Yeah, this is true.
As opposed to crocodiles.
Yeah, you have a lot of range when it comes to kind of the way your Dragonborn can look, if you think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
We already talked about your ancestry and breath weapon, which I think there's so many options. It's really just about your personal flavor and maybe whatever backstory that you want. A campaign, yeah. If you think that you know what kind of enemies you're going to be going up against, you might want to choose.
Maybe you're playing Rime of the Frost Maiden and there's a lot of white dragons in your vicinity. I'm just guessing because I never played Rime of the Frost Maiden. Maybe there's white dragons and so you're a chromatic white dragonborn sorcerer, draconic ancestry from the nearest white dragon in the Rime of the Frost Maiden land.
Exactly.
Oh shit, was that English?
I could probably find the words if I dig a bit harder, but I'm very tired.
Yeah. We're almost done here.
We're almost done. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Feats and abilities. Since we've already talked about the ancestry and the breath weapon, that's really up to you guys.
Right.
Feats and abilities. Okay. This is again leaning into the melee combat side of things for Dragonborn, but great weapon master, very good, especially if you're going to be a barbarian.
Yeah.
Pole arm master. I've never actually taken this feat, but I am kind of interested in choosing someone who's working with pole arms. I think that could be really fun and interesting.
Yeah.
Resilient boosts your saving throws, and elemental adept will enhance. Oh, tough is good. You're right. Enhancing damage with your chosen element, so you can add elemental adept to that.
Yeah.
So all right, now that we've kind of talked about what a Dragonborn is and all those things, let's talk about like some personal stories, any experiences we've had with Dragonborn.
Right.
I have a very short and quick one because as I've told you, I haven't played one. Nobody in my game has played one.
But you've DM'd as a Dragonborn NPC, right?
I have DM'd as a Dragonborn NPC. Actually,
so tell us about that.
As DMs are wont to do, we steal from each other, right? When Critical Role came out and he had the spoiler alert ? Chroma Conclave, right? The dragons, they were called the Chroma Conclave, and the name is what I stole because I loved the name so good. And so in my world, we have my Dragonborn live up in the north in the cold. They've kind of have an isolated city, and they have created a council of Dragonborn, which I call the Chroma Conclave. And that is because each Dragonborn of each color belongs to this council so that they are overseeing the entire city, overseeing their color Dragonborn's best interests. What ended up happening when my players came to this city, though, was it was all Dragonborn all the time, and it was getting hard for my players to kind of remember and distinguish which Dragonborn is which and who's who. Right. When you're dealing with more, like, I can't say that blue Dragonborn because they're going to come across another blue Dragonborn in 5 minutes. So
So you got to give them like little details. This one's got a bit of an
something
ear,
special, glasses, or so I did do that. But what I also did was I created like playing cards, kind of, so that when they were talking with a certain Dragonborn, I can throw out the playing card and they can see the picture and the very specific. They have glasses, they have a red robe, or whatever. It had more of a visual impact for them because this was an entire city of Dragonborn.
Right.
So that's really like, I haven't NPC'd like in a battle been playing a Dragonborn, so I don't really have any of that experience, but it has been fun creating that entire city and just thinking like, how do these Dragonborn rule a city together?
Right. Yeah, I've got a Dragonborn city as well. And the funny thing is, in my world, I don't know if you can see, there's this big black strip through there where the comet struck the world, right? That's the Parkard Rift. And at the very top of the rift up there is a city called Gabura Nox. So basically, the long story short is when the comet struck, Bahamut is the one that deflected it. But he got pinned under it and it smashed him and killed him. And so his bones are under the comet in the ground. And so the Dragonborn have this prophecy that when all of his bones have been collected and placed in a burial chamber, he will return and restore the world or some shit like that.
Wow, I like that.
So all of the Dragonborn in the city, they're very, very devoted to this idea. And anyone can try and get into the city, but only the most devoted people do. And there's very few humans. It's like goblinoids and ogres and so on. And they're all seeking redemption. And that to get into the city, they have to go through this thing they call the service, so that is a path of atonement for those seeking redemption, where the individuals serve the city and its deities, gradually purifying their souls as they contribute to the community over years. And so they have to become pure, because the idea is that the Parkard Stone's core is so fucking evil in and of itself that anybody that has to be close to it has to be pure so that it can't affect them.
Yeah.
So they have to go through these years of service in order to purify themselves before they can live in the city. So they're very religious and they have various ceremonies, and there's like a slum outside the city where the Dragonborn hang out. Oh, not the Dragonborn, the people that can't get in, the ones that aren't pure enough to get in, they just have a slum outside the city. The central core of the Parkard Stone is the famed comet that destroyed the sun and the moon at the end of the First Age, which killed Bahamut, making him a shadow dragon. So Bahamut in my game is a shadow dragon who's dwelling in the Shadowfell. But he communicates to these Dragonborn, or part of him, the spark of goodness that it was once Bahamut, communicates to the Dragonborn of the city through the stone, which they occasionally go and touch, and that's part of their ceremonies and stuff. So they have all these secret mysteries and understandings of Bahamut's sorrow, and they foster hope for his return and prepare for the prophesized fourth age. There's quite a lot more here, to be honest, about 2 pages, so I don't want to go too far into it. But
I really like that kind of lore, though. That is really fascinating, and I like that Bahamut is in like the Shadowfell. That's a nice something different.
Well, yeah, there's basically, he's a shadow dragon and he's evil now. But the long story arc, and don't tell my players this, basically, is that he is Bahamut, and at some point, if the prophecies are fulfilled, he'll be restored. So there's hope for him.
Yeah.
And so these poor Dragonborn that are trapped in the city, now they're the only Dragonborn in the world, by the way. There aren't any Dragonborn anywhere else, and nobody's even heard of Dragonborn. And the city is entirely closed and secret. So if you want to play a Dragonborn in Sidariel, you have to live in the city, unless you've run away somehow, and now you're going to be an alien.
Right. Everyone's going to look at you and go, "What are you?"
Right. So yeah, they're trying to keep the hope alive for Bahamut to return. They're doing him service, and to do that, they have to purify themselves just so they can stay close enough to hear his voice through this evil stone that they have to deal with.
Wow.
So, and if you are allowed into the city and you're going through the service, that's the name of the thing, the service, and you commit a crime, you get 3 strikes. And if you fail the 3rd strike, they feed you to the blue dragon that lives up in Maglubiot's maze at the top of the canyon rift, which is basically just this maze of glass where basically an atomic impact just turned everything into glass. And that's where this blue dragon Mesariah lives.
That's cool.
So, yeah, they feed you to Mesariah if you fuck up. But that's basically the story there. That's my take on Dragonborn, really. It's kind of a cult to Bahamut, but they're hopefully a little bit more nuanced than the sort of standard cult that comes along and is like, you get good cults and evil cults. And these guys are like, they're all about purifying themselves from one to the other in order to deal with it, and humility and stuff is part of that. So
no, I think you're really good about that. And I think, this is something that people should remember when they're building, if you're world building like this, is that I don't think any race is going to be, we've talked about this, inherently good or inherently bad.
Right,
and you need to be able to show examples of the in-between and the gray area. I like that you've done that.
Yeah, so this city's full of like mostly orcs and goblins and ogres and all of the non-fair races.
Yeah.
And so they're very common there, but most of the ones that are living in the city, if they're not Dragonborn, they're probably living essentially as indentured servants or almost slaves.
Yeah.
But they're doing it by choice. They've chosen to do that for a number of years to serve the order, to get redemption so that they can live there permanently. Yeah. And if you enter the city, you can't leave.
Are there humanoids in the city?
There are a few, very, very few, and they can't leave. Actually,
so like, did they come across like this secret, and they're like, "Whoa, what are these people?" And then like, "Oh no, now I have to live with these people forever."
Well, I've only ever had one group of players actually make it to the city, and when they did, what happened? They discovered that the Dragonborn have this alcohol they call Dragon's Breath. That was the one thing that they really wanted to take home with them, and they got this barrel of Dragon's Breath from the city of Gabora Nox, and they took it all the way back to Vane Gate on the other side of the continent. And now, whenever anybody goes to a tavern in Vane Gate, I tell them all about how the bartender has this one barrel of Dragon's Breath, and there's only one barrel, and it's worth a fortune, and just a small cup is a gold piece, and they have to make con saves to not be poisoned by it.
But how did they bring it back? I thought if you get there, you can't ever leave.
Technically, you can't, but they're player characters, so they found a way.
They
found a way. They were able to, break their way out. But
that's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There were reasons.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed our discussion on Dragonborn. I mean, I love that we were able to kind of throw in some of our personal experiences.
So after Dragonborn, but apparently
Dragonborn
gnomes. Okay. So we're talking about forest gnomes, deep gnomes, rock gnomes.
Yeah. I actually have a lot to add for gnomes. So a lot of personal stories.
Awesome.
Okay, folks. So next time we'll talk about gnomes. Hope you enjoyed our discussion on Dragonborn. Good night from me. Good night from him. And
good night from her, and also from me.
Yes.
Yeah.